Okay gamers, let's talk about Assassin's Creed series and discuss how did we end up, well, here, from the point of view of a long-time fan who played through almost all the games. The video will be divided into 3 chapters. First, I'm going to tell you how the games changed and evolved with time, and we'll see a very apparent, in hindsight, trend. Then we'll analyze some stats and numbers, and then we'll cover the failure that is known as Assassin's Creed Shadows. Most of this video is my own personal opinion, but I try to stay as objective as possible. Still keep in mind that about 60% of the information is subjective and only 40% is straight up facts. That said, let's start at the beginning. The first game, Assassin's Creed, was released in 2007. To me, it felt revolutionary and captivated me immediately. It had 3 major pillar stones that made the game stand out. Well-balanced combination of stealth, parkour, and combat. Apart from that, the game also had a good story, interesting lore, great visuals, fun map design, and somewhat historical accuracy, to an extent of course. If you have only played recent games, let me help you imagine how it was playing the first Assassin's Creed game. There were no weapon types or upgrades and no levels. It was just you and your skill. The game wasn't by any means difficult, I'd say it was still a very casual game, but your skill did matter and there was a learning curve to everything, fighting, stealthing, parkouring, which made it very rewarding to improve. During fights, you could get easily overwhelmed by many enemies at the same time, which forced you to try and sneakily take down everyone as the primary option, leaving combat as a last resort. For this purpose, the game introduced a pretty revolutionary concept at the time: social stealth. I have personally never seen it executed in such a way in any other game at that point. You could blend in with the environment and crowds to approach a target, and your target was the main goal. Sometimes it was unnecessary or overcomplicated to try to take down every single enemy. It was better to find your way around them, to strike the main target and then make your escape. Another thing that made the game stand out at the time, and that makes it different from recent titles, is the way parkour worked. It was manual. By that I mean you had to press a button to jump, you had to press a button to grab, you had to press a button to leap. As far as I remember, you had to press a button to run. Running wasn't automatic. And you had a full control over your movement and the direction you're going. And it was rather hard to learn it was still easy, but for such a casual game, it was kind of hard. But it was still easy. You get what I mean. Everything combined made the experience of playing Assassin's Creed special. It made you feel like you're one with the shadows, a sneaky, stealthy assassin, cool and agile parkour master. The game felt great, and this will become relevant later, so remember this sentiment. Before we proceed to talk about later games, I also want to mention the story and the lore of the first part. If you have played only recent games, chances are you're pretty confused about this whole simulation, Abstergo, Animus, DNA memories, Helix, etc. I mean, what does all this have to do with running around and assassinating targets, right? Well, the lore was very important in the first game. To make the long story long, in the first game, the real protagonist wasn't the assassin Altair ibn Lahad, even though he was a protagonist, right? It was Desmond Miles, an ex-assassin kidnapped by Abstergo, a modern corporation formed by Templiars, to use his DNA memories and see what his assassin ancestors, including Altair ibn Lahad, did, and where they hid a powerful artifact to locate it in modern time. Initially, when I played the first game, I was honestly pretty annoyed with all these constant interruptions from assassinating to get a bit more of Desmond's lore and story, but now Desmond Miles' story is the only one I remember. Literally all the other storylines from all the other games have already vanished from my head, even when it comes to the latest titles, but Desmond's story was moving, it made sense, it had a meaning. All this simulation, DNA, Abstergo nonsense had a meaning. Desmond's story spanned over 5 games, up until and including Assassin's Creed 3, and it made me feel things, cry, and was something that I still remember. After Desmond's story ended, at least to me, there was no more story in Assassin's Creed. I mean, why would I care about a random assassin whose life, according to the game's premise, has ended hundreds of years ago and we can now only see a simulation of it? Why would I care about that at all? The whole simulation idea kind of destroys the importance of each assassin's unique adventure, to me personally at least. Maybe it's different to you, and that's totally okay to have different opinions and different views on the subject. Please feel free to share in the comments how you feel about that, but do please keep it respectful. Overall, the first Assassin's Creed was great enough to let you have fun and make you hyped for the second, and that's all it had to do, honestly. Assassin's Creed 2 got released 2 years later and immediately was very different. It had a new engine. This engine was later used for the entire Ezio trilogy, and with that new engine, everything about the game felt refined. The parkour now was faster and smoother. Ezio, unlike Altair, could now swim in the water, had a second weapon. There was a variety of weapons, tools, consumables. He could now disarm opponents and use their weapons against them, and he could now also throw money to distract enemies, which now became a standard for stealth games. Everything was pretty much the same but better. Parkour, combat, stealth, all have been improved and felt even cooler than before. There was now a bigger region than in the previous game where you could ride a horse. It may be a slight difference, but when I tried to remember what stood out to me about each game, I couldn't even remember horses in Assassin's Creed 1, even though they were there. So to me, personally, horses kind of got introduced in the second part, which was pretty exciting. I also remember that map design improved greatly. There were more possibilities for long parkour runs, there were rope lines that Ezio could use, more opportunities to creatively use tools. There isn't much more to say about the game. It was everything that was great about the first part, but better in every single way. A strong step forward. Then there was Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. That game focused its improvements on stealth. It implemented more weapon types, but the most significant one was the crossbow that lets you perform stealth takedowns from a distance. The game also introduced assassin recruits, which was a mechanic that let Ezio summon recruits that would help him take down a few enemies stealthily along with Ezio himself, letting you deal with a group of enemies without raising alarms or attracting attention. Overall, to me, those changes were fun, but they felt pretty minor, so in my head I always considered this game a sideways step from the previous one, almost a carbon copy, if you will. The third game of Ezio trilogy was Revelations, and oh my god, it was awesome! It felt like they have learned from their previous games and decided to casually drop a masterpiece. Combat was perfected in Assassin's Creed 2, stealth was polished in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, and now it was time to make the parkour top-notch, and they really did succeed. Revelations was the most fun Assassin's Creed game to me, and my second most favorite game of the entire series. And yes, my most favorite game isn't the most fun Assassin's Creed game, but we'll get there. But first, let's answer the question, what made Revelations so fun? 2 words. Hook blade. That bad boy was everything you didn't know you needed. It lets you have even more control over your parkour, it lets you leap from the buildings further, and with a perfectly timed button press, you could cling onto a ledge with a hook blade and save your fall. It lets you wall jump higher, it helped you in combat, it was amazing. I can't even describe it, but when I think of Assassin's Creed parkour, I imagine flying from one rooftop to another, ready to catch my fall with a hook blade. When I imagine Assassin's Creed combat, I imagine disarming enemies with a hook blade. It was just fun. That game was the best game at making you feel great, like feel like an assassin, feel like you're improving. I remember back then each viewpoint was like a mini parkour challenge. I guess people who have played on the RPG trilogy can't imagine what I'm talking about. Well, back then you could only climb and grab onto ledges and wall cracks that already existed in the environment. You couldn't just hold left trigger up and your character climbs anything anywhere. No, you had to be tactical and smart about your movement, choosing a perfect route to take. And in Revelation, some viewpoints were inaccessible without the hook blade, which made it so satisfying to finally get up there once you got it. I can't really describe to you my feelings about Revelations. I think the most telling fact would be that I have a miniature of Ezio, even though I'm in no way a collector. That is the one and only miniature I own. Even though I regularly play D&D, I don't even have D&D miniatures, but I own Ezio with the hanging hook blade. If you have never played Revelations, I'm sorry, you don't know what Assassin's Creed is. And I'll get back to this sentiment later to double and triple and quadruple down, just you wait. Then, in the year 2012, there was Assassin's Creed 3. And not going to lie, I loved it. I did. It was great. But after I got my research done, refreshed everything about the games in my memory, and analyzed all the changes, I can certainly conclude that this was the start of the downfall that we are now witnessing, all the way back in 2012. But what happened? Well, they did two things that looked very innocent. Maybe could even be considered an improvement, honestly, but in hindsight were a massive mistake. First, they added a lot more animations, and with their new engine, third engine that they used, made the combat and parkour look smooth and cinematic. And then they combined free running and jumping into the same button input, making the parkour easier for the user. You might have lots of questions now. I mean, these changes sound really good. What's the issue? Well, the issue was that this was the first time they preferred how it looked over how it felt. It looked cooler, better than ever, honestly, and it felt easier and a little tiny bit less rewarding. Back then I didn't even notice the change and would keep being oblivious to it until we end up with the RPG trilogy. But this is where it started, and you'll see a very clear and obvious pattern as we go on talking about next games. So the third game looked the best. It also introduced first naval combat, which was a significant first step towards creating the best pirate game of all times. It had also hunting. You could use enemies as human shields. There were guns blazing everywhere, hence combat was more of a focus than stealth this time. There were lots of open forest areas to traverse, but you could now climb trees, and the map design was incredibly great, letting you parkour through trees and forest areas and branches and climb rocks, but only in places where there are cracks in the rocks. So pathing was still pretty important. The locations in the game were also very diverse, which felt like a breath of fresh air. It was a good game, but in my head it couldn't one-up Revelations, so I personally considered it a step sideways. A year later, Black Flag was released, and this game is my favorite game about pirates of all times, and the most favorite game of the series. Not the most fun Assassin's Creed game though, I'll explain to you why. It was really fun, but for all the wrong reasons. It didn't have parkour, didn't have combat, and didn't have stealth. And don't worry, I'll elaborate on these accusations and explain my position later. But my point here is, it was the most fun game, but the least Assassin's Creed game at that time. It felt like a totally separate, standalone experience that had nothing to do with Assassin's Creed, except for Assassin's attire, really. To make this even worse, this was the first time that didn't have Desmond as the main protagonist. Desmond's story was already over, and now you played as a random upstairs gameplay that just, well, existed. I mean, there were some lore about locating artifacts and using DNA memories, but that random play had no plot twists, no character, no friends, no choice, no character development. And in my memory, and I'm sure this is totally wrong, but in my memory they had no name. At least I don't even remember them having a name. It was this unimportant if they did. From this point on, in my personal, clearly controversial, okay? I see that it's controversial, I admit. But in my clearly controversial opinion, Assassin's Creed games have no story anymore, and no lore that would be substantial to each game in particular. Only lore that was confusing and unnecessarily implemented only for the sake of nostalgia, if anything else. I can't remember a single plot point of a single game past this point because they didn't matter anymore, at least to me. When I played previous parts, I played for gameplay and also to know what happens to Desmond Miles next. Now it was purely for gameplay that is going to get progressively worse. So, we have Black Flag, this weird standalone game that bears the same title as the famous Assassin's Creed series. What was fun about it? Again, two words. Guess what? No, not hook plate this time. Naval combat. Naval combat was the whole entire point of this game. The map was bigger than ever. It was significantly larger than in any previous games. And when I say significantly, I think you can't imagine what I'm talking about. It was 42 times bigger than all previous maps of all previous games combined. Obviously, not every inch of this map was a playable area. Most of it was covered by water. I mean, clearly, it's pirates that you traversed on the ship, but it was full of events, naval events, harpoon hunting, underwater diving. First underwater exploration, by the way, in the series. Naval combat, fighting ships, fighting legendary ships, little islands with their little treasures and challenges that you would spot here and there. It was fun. But you had even less control over your movement during parkour, comparing to the previous game. But not that it mattered, because there weren't many places to parkour around in the first place. There were a few cities around the map, and you couldn't parkour around them that much really. Stealth was also a background character. You could whistle from the foliage to attract attention, but overall it was all about, well, guns blazing. The only stealth that was integral, as I remember, it's underwater stealth when you had to hide from sharks in the kelp. That was it really. And combat was okay, but way too easy. Enemies were really weak and weren't a threat at all. It felt like the game made all possible obstacles that distracted you from your ship and naval exploration as easy and as insignificant as possible, which made it a very weird non-Assassin's and non-Creed, because you're a pirate, game. But overall, such a fun experience that I wholeheartedly recommend. It was my all-time favorite game for a long time, and even now it's up there. But in hindsight, this great game caused severe damage to the series. I'll elaborate on it in a little later, after I give you my 2 cents about Rogue, the next Assassin's Creed game. So, to make the short story shorter, Rogue was identical to Black Flag, a carbon copy, but the water was freezing, so you had limited time to swim around. The end? Now let's get to discussing Unity and the damage done by Black Flag to the series as I just used. So again, my take is going to be pretty controversial. Unity basically was the nail in the coffin of Assassin's Creed series as we knew it. And it's controversial, because for many people Unity is considered to be the staple of the series, the best game. I can explain how that happened, hear me out. So, Unity again used the new engine, the 4th engine at this point, and it looked the best. When it comes to stealth, nothing really changed that much mechanic-wise, but the entire map was designed for the purpose of stealth, unlike 3 previous games, which is a great change. I have nothing against that. When it comes to combat, it was very beautiful, very cinematic, it had lots of different combat animations and looked impressive, even though you really didn't have to input that much. And when it comes to parkour, many players do think about Unity when it comes to the best parkour, and it was the best looking. Visually, it was perfected, but when it comes to mechanics, well, it was the first game where engine had more control over parkour than you did. The engine decided where your character goes, what route is the best, which parkour move the character is going to perform. You just had to, well, hold left trigger up. Gameplay! You had no actual freedom of movement. If before, when you misstep and fall, it was, in most cases, entirely your fault. When it comes to Unity, it was engine's fault, and it was very annoying and very inconsistent. Looked the best though. And here we return to my previous sentiments. Ubisoft chose aesthetics, chose how it looked over how it felt. They decided to commit to that path fully, and it makes complete sense. The better the game looks, the better the videos on YouTube will look like, the better the streams will look like, the easier it is to market, the easier it is to sell. When it comes to how it feels, well, who the heck cares? Even if gamers don't finish the game, feel annoyed with the engine, don't play that much, who cares? The game is already sold, the money paid, profit, no hacking disadvantages, a very six-hat strategy to maximize revenue. It's not like they're gonna be, I don't know, frustrated and stop buying the games at some point, like Shadows. No! I mean, come on. Shadows didn't happen for good 10 years after that, so Ubisoft really was good for a very long time with this strategy. I truly believe at that point in 2014 it became extremely clear that player enjoyment and fun was secondary. Marketing and hence visual aesthetics and animations were primary for the studio. Unlike, games like Baldur's Gate, for example, who put players' fun first and foremost. No wonder Assassin's Creed never reached a masterpiece status after... Well, Black Flag's masterpiece status is also controversial, so I'd better shut up about that. Let's get back to Unity. Unity was still enjoyable. I remember playing it and liking it, though I also remember being frustrated a lot with the game and feeling that I had a lot less control over my character. I actually remember raging at this game and it stuck with me, cause I don't really experience rage when gaming. Even when it comes to Souls-like, and I played lots of Souls-like. Never raged though. Raged at Unity. When it comes to me and my, raging in games, I don't really rage when it's my fault, when I understand that, I could have played differently better and stuff. I rage when it's game's fault. And it was always game's fault when it comes to Unity and its engine. After Unity, there was one more game before the complete and final downfall of Assassin's Creed. That game was called Syndicate. And Syndicate, it was bad. It was really bad. It was clearly a testing grounds and a transitional step between Unity and RPG trilogy. Parkour stopped being a focus of the game completely. Ubisoft decided that Unity's route was perfect for them and they decided to double down. They automated vaulting and sliding so you could just, sit back, hold left trigger up, and the engine would decide and do everything else for you, while you're looking at pretty animations. Moreover, the map wasn't really built for parkour, it was London, it had huge wide streets, it was very inconvenient to parkour and you barely could find a place for lengthy parkour streaks. Stealth was also kind of ruined. I mean, the game did introduce kidnapping as social stealth, which was kind of fun, but no social stealth or stealth really mattered since Evie, one of the main characters, could literally go invisible. I know. And the last pillar of the almighty Assassin's Creed series, the combat, well, this game was the first game that heavily relied on levels. Level gating anything and everything. Harder enemies just meant beefier health bars. Your combat came down to spamming one attack over and over until you win. Does this remind you of anything? I mean, it was pretty much RPG trilogy before the RPG trilogy. The three pillars of Assassin's Creed were crumbling and holding on for dear life. And then the RPG trilogy finally happened, and somehow they made it even worse. I mean, I'm obviously the RPG trilogy hater, but I'll try to be as objective as possible, providing you facts as well as my personal opinion. So, Ubisoft created another new engine for the trilogy, and these RPG games clearly deviated from the original approach. It wasn't anymore a step-by-step process of evolving into this new version of Assassin's Creed. It was a straight-up clear cut from everything that Assassin's Creed was known for. Parkour? Wait, what is parkour? Did you mean climbing? And yeah, now you can climb anything, anywhere. No matter whether there are ledges or cracks or not, your character will find a way. Just hold left trigger up and close your eyes. Stealth? Wait, what is stealth? I don't know. Everything is so level gated that stealth doesn't matter. I mean, there are still some ways, some tools. In Origins, the first part of the trilogy, you can control arrows and take down enemies from afar, but overall stealth is no more. Even if you stealthily get to the target and try to eliminate them, they won't die. I mean, their level is higher, their health bar is beefier. Moreover, the detection system has been completely changed and ruined in my humble opinion. If before, your enemies went from not suspicious to suspicious to aggro, here they became aggro almost immediately. As they see you, all enemies know who they are looking for and are thirsty for blood. No one needs time to process who's that mysterious person climbing a statue. And the last pillar of Assassin's Creed, combat. What is combat? I mean, if pressing one button until you win doesn't work, just go find a rarer weapon, you bozza. Just increase your level, you six-head. Still can't beat it. Lucky you can literally pay to win, cause now there is an in-game shop with microtransactions where you can buy better weapons. And I know I just criminally simplified combat. It's not as dumb as I described it, but it feels it did feel as dumb to me comparing to what we had before. And it's a key word here, comparing. So what do we have left from Assassin's Creed if the main features the game was known for are a distant memory and there was no story past Assassin's Creed 3? Well, we still have amazing visuals. I mean, the game looks perfect. And it can be said about everything: customization options, weapons, armor, animations, landscapes, architecture, nature, literally everything. We also still have somewhat historical accuracy left, and we also have great world and map design left. There are lots of collectibles, the map is huge, even bigger than Black Flags, with bigger playable area. You can swim underwater anywhere you want, and well, nothing else really. It's just a mediocre, uninspiring RPG created on a massive budget that looks stunning. An aesthetic simulator, if you may. And I'm aware I'm criminally simplifying as well, but really, if you think about it, what is there to do in this game? Run around, look for better gear, smash one button to win, and hold left trigger up? I don't think that any thought goes into playing this game. To me personally, it was a beautiful PowerPoint presentation for $60 heckin' dollars. Just as engaging too, same amount of input required. When I tried Origins, I'm not going to lie, I felt scammed out of my money, absolutely heartbroken. But it looked cool, so it was easier than ever to market. So it attracted new audiences to the new Assassin's Creed series, which was great for Ubisoft. Let's do this again. To be fair, it was so easy to bait people into buying the game. I was baited as well, even though I promised myself to stop playing Assassin's Creed games after Syndicate. I just saw Jacksepticeye's video and how excited he was to see pyramids in the background and then get closer to them and explore them, and I got baited and played the game. And to be objective, there is nothing wrong with being a mediocre RPG on a massive budget. I have played and enjoyed many mediocre games in my life, so there were many people playing and enjoying these RPGs as well. You might be one of them, you might completely disagree with my sentiments and my hatred towards the RPG trilogy, but what we can all agree on is that the RPG trilogy was not an Assassin's Creed game. It was something completely different with a similar title. It was more of a ancient Egyptian athletic climber simulator with a sprinkle of casual murder than Assassin's Creed. It was so disappointing to me. I swore I'm never playing Assassin's Creed games ever again, which turned out to be a lie. Completely untrue, unfortunately. When Odyssey came out, I remember I decided to stay away from it. And I was confident I'm not giving Ubisoft my money. And I really did think I did stay away from the game. I remember nothing, nada, about it. But when I was typing out this script, and I was thinking of anything cool or fun the RPGs had, and I thought of killing ancient gods and mythical creatures like a minotaur. I was kind of confused. Why I remember freaking Minotaur if I never played Odyssey? Was it featured in any other game? But no. Then it started to come back. I remember the start of the game, the spear instead of a hidden blade and other beads and pieces, and I was so shocked. I remember that since I don't even watch anyone play Assassin's Creed at all. Meaning, I did play Odyssey, but my brain erased that from my memory completely. It was kind of surreal, remembering something you thought you never did. I was scammed far worse than I thought. It's kind of tragic, really. Though I still don't remember much of Odyssey, so I won't be ranting about that game, but it's pretty telling my brain tried to erase anything that had to do with the game from my memories. I'm still shocked by the revelation here, see what I did there? That I actually did play it. Now that I voiced my script, I actually remember more and more about Odyssey, so I'm 100% positive I did play it. But for the longest time, for years, I really did think I never played it. Like, how weird is that? How did a game manage to confuse me like this? Was it that bad? I don't remember. Then Valhalla came out in 2020, and I was fascinated with Vikings all my life, so of course I decided to try it out, even though I'm a huge Assassin's Creed RPG hater, even though it wasn't obvious. And it was a mistake. I remember playing it and I remember feeling insanely bored. I haven't even come close to finishing it and will never pick it back up. It was the same mediocre, uninspiring RPG on a huge budget, but with Vikings skin for $70 more, if not more. If I were to think of any improvements Valhalla did, I'd say that the combat was more fun, definitely. It was the focus, obviously, of the game, and they did try to make it engaging. There were village raids, base building, lots of little details and activities, but the game itself wasn't really engaging since, well, what is engaging about it? I want to feel like an assassin. I don't want an overpriced PowerPoint presentation. I still feel so disappointed and, dare I say, betrayed, scammed. After Valhalla there was Mirage, but we're not going to be talking about it for a simple reason that initially Mirage was intended to be a DLC for Valhalla, but they decided, why make a DLC if you can make a fully priced game? And I decided I'm not going to be scammed yet again, so I haven't played it, so I can't really say anything about the game since, well, I wouldn't know because I haven't played it. But I have heard that it was better than the RPGs. Last game of the series would be the latest Shadows, released just over a month ago, maybe 2 months at this point, because this video took a while for me to make, not gonna lie. But we'll get to the analysis of that game in the 3rd chapter of the video. At the moment we are done discussing all the previous games, how the series started and how it changed over time, becoming something unrecognizable in the end. Keep that in mind because all that we have discussed will be relevant as Shadows claim to quote-unquote return to the roots. There is an important conclusion that we can draw from my 10-minute rant. It's that Assassin's Creed Now and Assassin's Creed then are 2 completely different games. I mean, completely! Valhalla and Revelations have nothing in common, well, except for the title, and hence they were meant for different audiences. To understand how they performed, we'll look at whatever data was available. Obviously, previous chapter was mostly my subjective recollection of the way the series changed and transformed over the years. To get more objective conclusions, we'll analyze whatever data there is to analyze to get concrete facts instead of my hater opinions. First and foremost, I want to show you how many hours it takes to beat each game. The data here was collected by simply googling how many hours it takes. And normally there is an average reported by players, and in my experience I check every single game I play, and I play lots of games like that before I launch the game, and I constantly take around 10 more hours than it was stated, but other than that the information has been pretty consistent to me. But you have to keep in mind that these numbers aren't 100% accurate, but they still let us see the trends, and that's what we want. We want to see the trends. First of all, we can see that RPGs take 2 to 3 times more time to finish and 100% than earlier games, with the surprising exception of Origins. I didn't actually realize that Origins weren't as huge as I remembered that game to be. On the one hand, it's cool when open world games have hours and hours of content, but you have to realize that most of this time is spent by just simply traversing the map. So let's look how big the maps are. Obviously not entire map represents playable area. Black Flag and Odyssey are significantly bloated by the sheer amount of water you have to cross on ships, but there still are activities and things to do on your way while you're swimming. When it comes to how big the map is and how long it takes to beat and 100% the game, I think it all comes down to personal preferences, but I think we all like not having our time wasted to artificially prolong the gameplay. I try to assess the amount of content by looking at interactive maps and counting all activities and secondary quests. As you can see, the larger the map is, the more activities there are to do. Well, obviously, but it's more interesting to look at how many activities an average gamer finishes per hour. To get that number, I just divided the total activities by average hours needed to 100% the game, meaning that the results aren't very accurate, again, but are good enough to look at general trends. And as you can see, Ubisoft has a standard for amount of content that there should be in each game, since an average gamer finishes 1 to 2 activities per hour in each game, except for Rogue, that has weirdly few stuff to do overall, and Shadows, but we can't really look at Shadows data at the moment since I got this data around 2 weeks after the release, which means that the data doesn't represent an average gamer yet. It represents rushers, since most average gamers wouldn't have enough time to 100% the game in 2 weeks. So yeah, Ubisoft tries to add around 2 activities per hour for you to do, but as we remember, the scale of each map is extremely different when we compare RPGs and old-school Assassin's Creed games. If we look at how many activities we have per kilometer squared, we can see that all these games with huge maps have around 1.5 activity per kilometer squared. What does this mean? Well, imagine if you have to read 2 short stories, and in one case you have 66 stories around you. Just pick whichever you want. You pick 2 and it took you 1 hour to read them, so on average one story took you 30 minutes to finish. Now imagine that you only have 1 story to read and another one is somewhere 1 kilometer away from you, and it also took you 1 hour to find and read both of them. Obviously, since you were traveling and looking for that second story, but it took you the same amount of time to finish both of them, there was a lot less content in the second situation. Similarly to that, if we compare Unity and Valhalla, both games have almost exactly 2 activities per hour. In Unity's case, you're doing them and obviously finding collectibles and just fucking around, and you have 66 activities in the vicinity. In Valhalla's case, you're also doing 2 per hour, and well, also getting collectibles and also fucking around, but there's only 1 activity in the vicinity and another one is 1 kilometer away somewhere. Obviously, in the first case, that hour is spent mostly on content and collectibles, and in second case, that hour is divided between a little content, collectibles, and wasting time traversing empty but beautiful space. What I'm trying to say, RPGs have much less content density, meaning the map is huge, but it feels empty, feels like a time waste. And as I remember, it really did feel like that to me, especially Valhalla. Stats show that Odyssey was worse than Valhalla, but as I already said, my brain protected me from remembering anything about Odyssey. I even thought I never played it. This is how bad that experience was for me, so yeah, I don't doubt that it was way worse than Valhalla, but I don't remember to confirm. Before we move on, I also want to mention the elephant in the room, Assassin's Creed 1. You might be asking, what the hell is going on? 500 activities per square kilometer? What? Well, we got that number because it was stated that Assassin's Creed 1's map is only 0.13 kilometers squared, which is, I highly doubt that it's that small. I really saw the results we got for the first game. I wouldn't really analyze the first and the last games. The first because, honestly, 0.13 kilometers is very sus, and the last because, well, again, these data that you're seeing I got 2 weeks after the release, so it doesn't represent an average gamer like all the other games do. It represents rushers, and we can't compare rushers to average gamers to see trends because, well, to see trends you need to compare the same type of audiences. That's why don't look at the last game, don't look at the first game. But I'll still show you everything because, well, that's what I got. Let's sum up the facts that we have. RPG games are huge comparing to OG games. Not counting Black Flag and Rogue, map size is sometimes 200 times bigger than OG games, and it takes 3 to 4 times as much time to finish and or 100% respectively. OG games, secondary content is denser. RPG games are more empty, vast space but wasted. These facts kind of back up the sentiments I already expressed about RPG trilogy in the previous part, but we are not done nerding yet. I want to judge the rate at which gamers stop playing the game. Do they finish the story? How many people 100% the game? How many drop the game after the first hour? To get that info, I looked at the percentage of gamers who completed certain Xbox achievements. Luckily for us, Xbox not only shows the percentage of gamers but also gives an exact number of gamers who were accounted for these percentages. I know that the games are available on PlayStation, PC, but an average gamer is an average gamer everywhere. That's why we can use the Xbox data to see trends that are going to stay accurate and relevant for gamers on other platforms as well. Let's see together. This graph shows us how many people started the game, how many played for around 1 hour, how many reached the middle of the game, how many finished the story, and how many got platinum. Keep in mind that I was taking the percentage based on achievement completion, and achievements aren't given at the precise points in the story. They aren't given exactly 1 hour in, exactly half of the story in, etc. Meaning this data is also not very accurate, so we can only use it to notice general trends. This is kind of applies to everything we have discussed when it comes to data. Data isn't accurate, unfortunately, because we don't have accurate data. We have only what we have. So yeah, we can only track general trends. Keep that in mind, gamers. And there are a few trends in this case. First, and the most obvious thing, is that Ezio Trilogy, Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood, and Revelations have the best percentage of people finishing the game, and even 100% in the game. More than 90% keep playing after 1 hour, and more than 50% of people have finished the story, which can't be said about any other game from the series. We can also see conventionally quote-unquote bad games on this graph. For example, Syndicate. Around a third of gamers played less than 1 hour and dropped the game. Basically, they haven't finished doing introductory missions. Then only 50% reached the middle, meaning 1 hour of gameplay was more than enough for many. And those who have reached the middle evidently already liked the game enough to play till the middle, and most of them naturally also finished the story. Basically, this means that only half of the gamers like the game enough to play for a substantial amount of time, comparing to 70% of gamers who reach the middle point in Brotherhood. Using this graph, you can see which game is generally more liked and better received. So, based on this, we can see that good games are considered to be, by these stats, Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood, and Revelations. Bad games are Black Flag, Syndicate, Odyssey, and Valhalla. Again, we can't really say anything about Shadows because I was doing this analysis 2 weeks after the release, so many people didn't have time to finish the game yet. Now, I'm not surprised at all about Ezio Trilogy and it being the best. Odyssey and Valhalla, I'm also not surprised. But I'm very surprised Black Flag was poorly received and Origins was well received. The only reason for Black Flag's drop rate I see is that it was very different from general Assassin's Creed games. Remember I said it was a different game with the same title? Most of the game you'd spend fighting ships, diving, harpoon hunting. I guess not so many gamers expected that and dropped the game pretty fast. Rogue's results are also weird, but they will make perfect sense in a little bit. When it comes to Origins, we can see that only 70% of gamers played for around 1 hour, which is crazy. It's the worst result out of all games, but those who played for 1 hour, most of them proceeded to play until the end. It feels like when people launch the game, Assassin's Creed fans who, well, bought the game because of, well, Assassin's Creed, dropped it pretty soon and were pretty sad and disappointed, me included. And the rest are those who bought the game because of RPG and they seem to really like the game and play until the end. It just basically backs up my sentiment about RPG Trilogy targeting a completely new, different audience than before, which is why there are so many people who seem to enjoy the game and yet so many people calling it absolute trash. Both are true, you're all right, you're all correct. It just matters what's your status quo. If you wanted Assassin's Creed game, then it is a complete trash. And those people who wanted another Assassin's Creed game drop it pretty fast. If you wanted an RPG, well, it provided an RPG. A stunning RPG as well. Both are true. Basically, this chart depicts the general reception of each title by gamers. We can judge which game was more fun, which was less enjoyable, but apart from that, it's important to see the same chart from the perspective of the company, to understand why they stopped making such well-received games like Ezio Trilogy, why they kept looking for something new and replacing parts of the ship until the ship was a completely different vessel. Voila! Let me present you the same graph, but not in percentage of gamers, but in actual amount of players. Remember I said Rogue's data will become pretty logical in a little bit? Well, here we are. Almost no one played Rogue for whatever reason. I actually never thought why Rogue wasn't as popular as other games. I just remember when I was trying to discuss the game with other gamers the year of its release, no one even heard it was coming out. 70% of gamers who tried and haven't dropped the game the first 1 hour knew what they were in for and kept playing until the end, which explains the relatively big percentage of those who finished and 100% in the game, even though we know that it wasn't that well received. With the Rogue out of the way, we can see another explanation of why Ubisoft stopped doing such good games as Ezio Trilogy. Because people wanted something fresh, something new, not as many players went for second and third part of Italy adventures. As you can see, each time they changed the setting and did something different from what was expected, more gamers bought the game. Assassin's Creed 3, profit. Black Flag, profit, even though we know that there was a pretty high rate of dropping the game. The gamers paid, and that's the only thing that matters to the company such as Ubisoft. Rogue, carbon copy of Black Flag didn't perform at all. Looking at this graph, I also want to point out that I tried to find the numbers for copies sold or for gamers who played the game, and there were some numbers, but they became excessively vague when I tried to find any info about RPG Trilogy. So I just want to remind you all that we are looking at a little group of people, those who play Xbox, those who have their achievements open for public, to get an idea of general trends. The info isn't very accurate. The most important conclusion to draw out of this analysis and video chapter is that Ubisoft tried their bestest to keep the numbers of copies sold high. They changed the mechanics and the vibe of the game radically to keep it fresh and to keep the game selling while kind of forgetting about player satisfaction, which we can see by rate of drop in the game increasing and being all times high with Valhalla. And now, finally, let's talk about Shadows. We know that there were lots of drama and scandals and marketing mistakes made by this studio, which alienated the Japanese market completely. But there are already many good videos done that go into details about these topics, the drama and stuff. I think that average gamer doesn't go out of their way to stay in tune with all the fresh drama. That's why I kind of want to keep my analysis from the perspective of an average gamer who haven't really heard of all these scandals Ubisoft was involved in. Many gamers call Shadows just okay and very average. I personally haven't played it because I was scammed too many times by Ubisoft, but I want to try and deduce the reasons, not taking drama into account, why Shadows aren't really performing well and feels just okay. Even though, in my humble opinion, in my hater opinion, we are well past the point of just okay. We hit just okay 2 releases ago. What are you on about? Okay, first, liking good concept. Concept is the most important part of any game, obviously, but when it comes to Assassin's Creed, there are already set expectations that Shadows doesn't meet. Let's remember, from the first part of the video, we have discussed the main pillars of Assassin's Creed: good parkour, stealth, combat, as well as, a little less significant but still important, great map design. By that I also mean chosen vibe, chosen time period and country. Stunning visuals, somewhat historical accuracy and story. As I have already expressed before, there is no story after Assassin's Creed 3. There is no combat, no stealth and no parkour after Unity. What's left? Map design, visuals and somewhat historical accuracy. During chapter 2 we have realized that RPG Trilogy's map are vast but empty, so we have lost map design as well. Somewhat historical accuracy and visuals are hanging on for dear life. But in all the previous games, every single one we play as an original character, an assassin that pretty obviously hasn't existed. The character is put into somewhat real historical events and lets us experience them. Because we are playing as a rando basically, I think it's clear for everyone that there is a ton of creative liberties in the quote-unquote historical accuracy, that it's a creative take on known historical events. You don't have to know history to understand that some assassin rando didn't use Leonardo's war machines to destroy Templars. But Shadows has a protagonist who actually did exist. Even if we aren't talking about the whole drama of Ubisoft claiming for Yasuke to be a samurai. As an average gamer, when you're playing as Yasuke and sleeping with a woman who's known to be a human manifestation of loyalty, how much of it is accurate? How much is creative liberty? It becomes really confusing and not very fun. Basically, the whole world who have heard of Assassin's Creed is going to think that Yasuke was a samurai involved in a romantic relationship with Oichi. I'm sorry if I mispronounced the name. I can't blame Japanese people to take offense to that. So yeah, somewhat historical accuracy. Wait, where is it? Oh yeah! in the trash. So basically the expectations we have left with for the entire game is visuals. I mean, I don't doubt Shadows provided visuals. That will be $70, please. Second, erratic marketing. To sell anything, I mean anything, you really should understand who your target audience is. I mean, even if you want to perform on YouTube, you should understand who your video is for. Well, who Shadows is for. We had two pretty group of gamers enjoying Assassin's Creed. First, the OG gamers who loved a bit of learning curve, control over movement, somewhat challenging mechanics, and feeling like an assassin. And second group, who are RPG enjoyers, who love simplicity, gorgeous views, relaxing experience, looting equipment, and trying out different weapons. Shadows, right off the bat, marketed itself as a return to the roots, which clearly leaving all the problems, or, well, features, depending on your status quo, that destroyed the roots. Level gating, simplicity, and lack of control over movement. So now you can go prone and be one with the shadows, but how does it matter if everything is level gated? And you won't be able to kill anyone anyway? So you can't really play as an assassin, but you can't play as samurai as well, because the entire game was designed for an assassin. All the back to the roots parkouring, exploring, synchronizing, collecting stuff. It's like you've tried to please both groups to double the profit, but ended up confusing everyone. The game ended up not being for OG gamers and not for RPG enjoyers, and ended up being for Ubisoft shills to glaze and content creators to shit on the game, which are both not very large groups of people. Third, microtransactions. They aren't new. We have been dealing with them for a while, but I feel like it was and is very annoying, and it feels more in your face with every single game. Pay to win in a single player game? Ridiculous. The fact that you can pay to unlock synchronization points is just outrageous. Why even playing the game? I feel like microtransactions in Shadows went from annoying to defeating the purpose of playing in the first place. Fourth reason, accumulated frustration with the company. I'm sure I'm not the only one who felt scammed by previous releases. Maybe not only Assassin's Creed releases, maybe it also applies to Far Cry or recent Skull and Bones release. That was a massive failure. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Well, in my personal case, fool me three times a charm to stop buying the games. Gamers aren't just stupid dum-dums to abuse and scam out of their money. Trust is an important factor, and if it's broken, it's hard to get past it. Some companies did manage to redeem themselves after breaking trust, like CD Projekt Red and their Cyberpunk 2077. It happened before, but in Ubisoft case, it's not the first time they disappoint, and recently they were on a freaking streak of failures. If we don't even count all those, RPG Assassin's Creed games. Far Cry 6, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Star Wars Outlaws, Skull and Bones, and each flop is worse than the previous one. Ubisoft has been living on a borrowed time, and time is due. I'm not informed enough to judge whether they can or can't get it together, but at the moment it is what it is. Gamers lost trust, me included, as obviously you can tell. Gamers don't believe in Ubisoft anymore and don't want to be fed flops. And as you have heard me saying when it comes to Mirage and Shadows that I'm not buying them because I've been scammed too many times already, I feel like I'm not the only one with such sentiment. Fifth reason, last but not least reason, I clearly see all the unnecessary details. Drawing birds, petting cats, building bases, etc. Don't get me wrong, having details is great. Every single masterpiece has tons of such details. You can pet dogs in Red Dead Redemption. You can play a tabletop game in The Witcher 3. What can't you do in Skyrim? Details are good, but when you don't really have anything going for the game in the first place, details just waste your budget away, leaving you with a very expensive PowerPoint presentation and an ability to pet a cat. It feels more like a band-aid sloppily slapped over a massive content hole to create an illusion of something. But gamers aren't dum-dums. Empty game will feel empty and just okay, no matter how many details you cram into it. As a wise woman once said, Details make a masterpiece out of a great game, but they can't make shit shine. That wise woman is me. I just said it. The code is yours now. Use it and abuse it. That's been all for me. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk and go get to gaming already.